Lucas Harrington had always believed control was the purest form of safety. At 34, he was already a titan of global finance, cold, precise, and terrifyingly efficient. He built empires the way others built routines, methodically, without emotion, without hesitation. People admired him from a distance and feared him up close. Lucas didn't mind either. Emotion, he believed, clouded judgment. Love, even more so. This story doesn't end here. Subscribe now for more billionaire drama, hidden secrets, and unforgettable endings. That belief had shaped his marriage. Elena Moore was nothing like him. Where Lucas measured the world in profit margins and leverage, Elena saw people. She spoke gently, laughed freely, and believed, foolishly, Lucas once thought, that trust could solve what power could not. She had entered his life quietly, without ambition, without expectation, and somehow found a way into the one place he guarded most fiercely, his private world. By the time she became his wife, Elena was already pregnant. Lucas never said he regretted it. But he never said he celebrated it either. The night everything collapsed began like any other business evening in New York City, with Lucas stepping out of a black car beneath hotel lights that gleamed like polished knives. The concierge at the Aurelius Grand Hotel greeted him by name, voice smooth, deferential. Lucas barely nodded. He was already scrolling through his phone, reading a message that had arrived minutes earlier. "You need to see this. Room 1807. The sender was Victor Hale, his closest friend since university. The one man Lucas trusted without question. Victor had stood beside him during hostile takeovers, boardroom wars, and long nights that reeked of whiskey and ambition. If Victor sounded urgent, Lucas listened. He rode the elevator alone. Each floor ticked past in silence, broken only by the faint hum of machinery and the tightening pressure in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation he dismissed as irritation. Elena was supposed to be home. 8 months pregnant. Resting. When the elevator doors slid open, the hallway smelled faintly of expensive cologne and chilled air. Room 1807 stood at the far end, door slightly ajar. Lucas slowed. Something about the stillness felt wrong. He pushed the door open. The room was dim, curtains half-drawn, city lights bleeding in like distant fire. A king-sized bed sat in the center, and on it lay Elena. Her dress was rumpled. Her shoes were gone. Her hair spilled across the pillow like ink. And beside her, too close, far too close, was Victor. Lucas felt the world tilt. For a moment, no one moved. Victor stood frozen, shirt half unbuttoned, eyes wide with something that looked like panic. Elena didn't stir. She looked pale, unnaturally still. "What is this?" Lucas asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. Victor swallowed. "Lucas, listen, this isn't." "Don't," Lucas said quietly. He stepped closer, every sense sharpening. The sight burned itself into him, the undone bed, the intimacy of proximity, the undeniable implication. His mind filled in gaps with ruthless efficiency. Elena had been distant lately. Tired. Emotional. Pregnant women, he'd been told, were unpredictable. The explanation formed itself before anyone spoke. "You're unconscious," Lucas said, staring down at her. "That's convenient." Victor reached out. "She didn't mean for this." She was confused. "I tried to stop it." That was the moment something inside Lucas hardened permanently. He turned to Victor, eyes glacial. "Get out." Victor hesitated. "Lucas." "No." Victor left. The door closed with a soft click that echoed louder than any shout. Lucas stood there for several seconds, staring at the woman he had married, the woman carrying his child. His child. Rage, betrayal, humiliation, they tangled together until he could no longer separate them. Elena stirred then, eyes fluttering open. "Lucas." Her voice was weak, disoriented. What happened? He didn't answer immediately. You should explain, he said finally, voice devoid of warmth, before I decide how public this becomes. Her brow furrowed. Explain what? I don't. My head hurts. You were in bed with my best friend. Silence. Elena's eyes widened, terror rushing in. No, I wasn't. I would never. Lucas, I don't remember coming here. I felt sick earlier. Victor said he'd help. You expect me to believe that? Lucas interrupted. You disappear, end up in a hotel room, half-dressed, with him? Tears welled instantly. I swear to you, something is wrong. I don't feel right. Please. Enough. The word landed like a verdict. Lucas straightened his jacket, the gesture mechanical. I trusted you. I defended you against every rumor, every doubt. And this is what you do. Elena tried to sit up, panic overtaking her. Lucas, please. I'm pregnant. I would never betray you. I love you. Love. The word sounded foreign. Dangerous. You should have thought of that, he said. Both of you. He turned away. Lucas, she cried. Don't leave me. Please. He paused at the door, not to turn back, but to deliver the final blow. I'll have my lawyers contact you, he said coldly. Do not try to reach me again. And then he walked out. By morning, Elena Moore would wake alone in a hospital bed, abandoned, disgraced, and erased from Lucas Harrington's life. By morning, the man Lucas once was would already be gone. Elena didn't remember the hotel room the way Lucas remembered it. She remembered fragments, blurred edges, a heavy fog in her veins, the taste of bitterness on her tongue like she'd swallowed coins. She remembered Victor's voice, too close, too gentle, telling her she just needed to lie down for a minute. She remembered reaching for her phone to call Lucas and realizing her fingers wouldn't obey her. Then darkness. When she woke, the ceiling was white and too bright. The air smelled like antiseptic and sterile linen. A nurse stood over her, checking a monitor, expression carefully neutral. Mrs. Harrington, the nurse said. You're awake. Elena tried to speak and winced. Her throat was sandpaper. My husband. Lucas. The nurse's gaze flickered, then steadied. There were instructions left. You have visitors restricted. It took Elena a full minute to understand the meaning of that sentence. Lucas wasn't coming. She tried calling him anyway. Over and over. Voicemail. Then nothing, because her number stopped going through. When Victor appeared later, he arrived with practiced concern and a bouquet of lilies that smelled like a funeral. He sat at the edge of her hospital bed, face drawn, eyes lowered as if he were ashamed. I tried, he said softly. I tried to stop it before he walked in. But he wouldn't listen. Elena's hands trembled against the blanket. Stop what? Victor, I don't understand. Why was I there? I don't remember. Victor sighed, the sound carefully measured. You were upset. You called me earlier. You said you needed someone. I thought I was helping you. And then, Lucas saw what he saw. Elena stared at him, her stomach twisting in a slow, sick spiral. That's not true. Victor met her eyes. Elena, please. This is already bad. The only thing you can do now is protect yourself. Protect herself. She was 8 months pregnant. Her husband had vanished from her life in a single night, and the city's gossip machine was already chewing through her name. Within 48 hours, it became official. Divorce papers arrived, delivered by a man in a perfect suit who didn't look at her for more than a second. The terms were brutal, a sealed agreement, a non-disclosure, and a clause that made her feel like she was drowning. Lucas Harrington was cutting her off completely. No calls. No meetings. No explanations. No mercy. Elena signed nothing at first. She fought, begged for a conversation, pleaded for a chance to explain what she couldn't even fully explain to herself. But Lucas never appeared. His lawyers spoke for him in words that sounded like steel. In a city like New York, where Lucas had influence in every boardroom and every skyline, Elena realized quickly she could not win a public war. Not with her name already poisoned. Not with a baby on the way and her body exhausted from stress and shock. So she disappeared. She left in the early hours of a rainy morning with one suitcase, one locked phone, and a quiet determination that felt like rage without the noise. She didn't go to her parents. They were gone. She didn't go to friends. Too dangerous. Instead, she boarded a flight west under her maiden name and crossed into a different life. Vancouver greeted her with cold air and distance. It was exactly what she needed. Her son was born weeks later in a small private clinic where no one cared about power or rumors, only the steady rhythm of survival. When the nurse placed him in her arms, Elena stared at his tiny face and felt something inside her break and rebuild in the same instant. He had Lucas's eyes. Not just the color, something deeper. The intensity. The quiet watchfulness, even as a newborn. Elena held him closer, tears falling silently into his hair. "I won't let you become a weapon," she whispered. "And I won't let anyone ever leave you the way he left us." She named him Noah. Not as a symbol. As a promise. The first year was a war fought in small rooms and long nights. Elena worked from her laptop while Noah slept on her chest. She took consulting contracts nobody wanted, cleaned spreadsheets nobody understood, and built connections with people who didn't care who she used to be, only what she could do. She was brilliant, and in the absence of comfort, brilliance became her only currency. Her mind was sharp, but grief still hunted her. Some nights she woke gasping, the hotel room replaying itself in flashes. The helplessness. The humiliation. The feeling of being erased by a man who never even gave her the dignity of listening. But every time she looked at Noah, she remembered why she could not fall apart. So she built. 2 years after arriving, she launched a small investment and logistics firm using her own savings and a single silent partner she never met in person. She didn't trust easily anymore. She didn't charm. She didn't beg. She simply delivered results, and results spoke louder than reputation. By year 3, that firm had grown into something bigger, something that drew attention. By year 5, it had a new name, North Shore Global Industries, and Elena Moore sat at the head of its board like she had been born there. She did not become a CEO out of revenge. She became one because power was the only shield the world respected. Across the continent, Lucas Harrington lived in a different kind of ruin. His mansion still stood, spotless, glass and marble, staffed and silent. His calendar still overflowed with meetings, his portfolio still multiplied. He still won. But nothing tasted like victory anymore. Something had cracked in him that night, and in the years that followed, it widened into a hollow. He told himself it was justified. He told himself betrayal deserved punishment. He told himself Elena had chosen it. Yet the story never settled comfortably in his mind. Some details bothered him, Elena's confusion, her pallor, the unnatural stillness in her body. In the first months after, he drowned those questions in work. In the second year, he buried them under acquisitions. By the fourth, they rose anyway, persistent and sharp as splinters. Victor remained in his orbit through it all, slipping deeper into his business world as if nothing had happened. Victor became indispensable, handling deals, guiding boards, standing beside Lucas at events with the easy confidence of a man who had nothing to hide. And Lucas let him. Trust, after Elena, was a scarce resource. Victor was familiar, useful, safe. Or so Lucas believed. The truth arrived in the form of a security review. It was an unglamorous thing, the kind of corporate cleanup Lucas usually delegated. But a string of anomalies had surfaced, internal leaks, altered access logs, quiet accounting discrepancies that felt like fingerprints. Lucas decided, for once, to oversee it himself. He sat in a dark screening room in his headquarters, watching old footage scroll past on multiple monitors, elevators, hallways, stairwells. Ghosts of routine. Nothing. Until a date flashed on screen that made his pulse jump. The night. The Aurelius Grand Hotel. Floor 18. Hallway camera. Lucas leaned forward. There, Victor, walking quickly, looking over his shoulder. Victor held a small vial between his fingers, disappearing into his palm like a magician's trick. The next clip showed Elena arriving, unsteady, as if the floor moved under her. Victor guiding her, hand firm at her elbow, ushering her toward room 1807. Lucas felt the room go cold. The footage jumped again. Victor entering alone minutes earlier with a hotel staffer. Victor handing something small to the staffer. The staffer nodding. Another clip, Victor at the minibar, pouring something clear into a glass. Stirring it. Waiting. Lucas's mouth went dry. The last clip was the one that shattered what remained of his certainty. Victor adjusting Elena's dress while she lay limp. Victor stepping back, taking photos on his phone, carefully framing the scene. Victor looking directly at the camera for half a second, almost smiling, before turning away. Lucas couldn't breathe. His hands tightened into fists without his permission. For 5 years, he had lived as if his cruelty was righteous. For 5 years, Elena had lived with his punishment. And all along, Victor had engineered it. Lucas stood so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. The monitors kept playing, indifferent. But inside Lucas Harrington, a different film began, one of every moment Elena had pleaded, every tear he had ignored, every door he had slammed shut. The room blurred. Not from tears. From something worse. Regret. And when regret finally arrived, it came with teeth. Lucas turned off the monitors with a shaking hand, as if darkness could undo what he had seen. It couldn't. He left the screening room like a man walking out of a burning building, stunned, hollow, and suddenly aware that he had destroyed the one person who had ever loved him without wanting anything in return. And somewhere in Vancouver, a woman he had abandoned had become untouchable. Lucas didn't know it yet, but the search for Elena Moore was about to begin. And it would not be gentle. Lucas Harrington did not sleep the night after the footage. He sat alone in his office as dawn bled slowly across the city skyline, watching the light climb the glass towers he owned, controlled, and no longer felt connected to. The man in the reflection staring back at him looked older than he remembered, harder around the eyes, hollow in places no wealth could fill. Victor Hale did not answer his calls. That silence confirmed everything. By morning, Lucas initiated a private internal investigation so sealed it bypassed his own board. Victor's access was frozen. His accounts flagged. His offices locked. The man who had once stood beside him at every victory vanished in less than 24 hours. But vengeance, Lucas realized, brought no relief. The damage that mattered had already been done. Elena. Her name echoed in his mind like a locked door he had slammed shut with his own hands. For the first time in years, Lucas allowed himself to remember her without anger. The way she used to press her palm against his chest when he worked too late. The way she talked to his silence as if it were something alive. The way she had looked at him that night, not guilty, not defiant, but frightened. And pregnant. The weight of that truth settled deep and heavy. Lucas began searching for her immediately. At first, he expected it to be easy. He was Lucas Harrington. Information bent toward him. People appeared when summoned. Paper trails unraveled under pressure. But Elena Moore had vanished with intention. Her New York records stopped abruptly. No forwarding address. No public filings. Her name disappeared from social circles, foundations, and investment lists as if she had been erased. Lucas realized with dawning clarity that she had not fled in panic. She had planned. Days turned into weeks. Lucas expanded the search internationally, deploying private investigators who specialized in finding people who did not want to be found. Every lead collapsed into dead ends. Elena had changed her name briefly, worked under shell contracts, moved quietly. Lucas recognized the strategy. It was the kind of caution he himself used. The first real break came from a junior analyst in his risk division, a young woman who noticed unusual overlap between several logistics contracts Lucas's firm had quietly lost bids on over the past 3 years. The same competing entity had outmaneuvered him repeatedly, always without publicity, always efficiently. Lucas studied the report in silence. The company name at the top stopped his breath. North Shore Global Industries. He knew it. Everyone in the upper financial tier knew it. North Shore had emerged seemingly overnight and grown with alarming precision. Its leadership was private. Its board invisible. Its strategies ruthless and elegant. It didn't posture. It didn't boast. It simply won. Lucas stared at the CEO line. Elena Moore. For a moment, the world ceased to exist. She hadn't just survived. She had risen. Lucas leaned back slowly, heart pounding, not with hope, but awe and terror intertwined. The woman he had abandoned, broken, and dismissed had built something formidable. Something powerful enough to cross his path without him ever realizing who stood behind it. He requested a private dossier. What he read left him shaken. Elena had relocated to Vancouver 5 years ago under her maiden name. She'd taken low-level consulting work, then founded a small firm. No scandals. No leaks. No drama. Just relentless growth. North Shore now employed thousands and controlled key supply routes across the Pacific. She was untouchable. Lucas realized then that he no longer had leverage. Only regret. He did not reach out immediately. For days, he stared at her photo, professional, composed, eyes steady. The softness he remembered was still there, buried beneath steel. She looked like a woman who had learned how to survive without mercy. And beside her, in a smaller, private image flagged as confidential. A boy. Dark hair. Serious eyes. Lucas's eyes. Lucas sat very still. There was no doubt. No need for confirmation. The child was his. He closed his eyes and pressed his fist against his mouth, the sound that escaped him raw and unguarded. 5 years. 5 birthdays he had never known. 5 years Elena had carried the weight of his absence alone. When he finally initiated contact, he did not send lawyers. He sent a request. A single line through a private, secure channel. I know the truth. I need to speak with you. The reply came 2 days later. A video call. One time. The call connected at exactly 8 p.m. Lucas sat alone, suit immaculate, posture rigid as if discipline could steady him. The screen flickered. Elena appeared. She was seated in a bright office overlooking water, evening light brushing the edges of the room. She wore a tailored jacket, her hair pulled back neatly. Controlled. Untouchable. Lucas, she said evenly. Hearing his name in her voice almost broke him. Elena, he replied, swallowing. Thank you for... I'm not doing this for you, she interrupted. Say what you need to say. He nodded once. I was wrong. The words felt inadequate the moment they left him. I know, she said. I saw the footage, he continued. What Victor did. What he did to you. I didn't know. I should have listened. I should have. You should have believed me, Elena said quietly. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lucas looked at her then, not as a man seeking forgiveness, but as one confronting the full measure of his failure. I destroyed your life. No, she said. You abandoned it. I rebuilt it. Movement crossed the background. A small figure stepped into frame. The boy looked at the screen curiously, then at Elena. Mama. Lucas's breath caught. The child was unmistakable. Elena rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. Go finish your homework, Noah. Noah glanced once more at the screen, studying Lucas with a seriousness far beyond his years, then nodded and left. Lucas stared at the empty space where his son had been. My son, he whispered. Elena's gaze sharpened. He doesn't know you. I want to, Lucas said. I want to be part of his life. I want to make this right. Elena leaned forward slightly. You don't get to want. You get to earn. He nodded. Tell me how. She shook her head. That's not how this works. You don't get instructions. You don't get timelines. You don't get promises. Lucas's voice trembled. Please. Elena's expression did not change. I carried him alone. I built everything you see so he would never need you. Not your money. Not your name. I can help. No, she said firmly. If you help, it's for the world. Not for us. She stood. This call is over. Elena. She looked directly into the camera. As far as I'm concerned, Lucas Harrington died 5 years ago. The screen went dark. Lucas sat there long after the call ended, hands resting uselessly on the desk, heart exposed and bleeding in ways power could not seal. For the first time in his life, Lucas Harrington understood something fundamental. He could not buy redemption. He would have to become someone worthy of it. And he had no idea if that would ever be enough. Lucas Harrington's world didn't collapse after the call. It simply stopped meaning anything. The next morning, he arrived at his headquarters on time, greeted staff by name, reviewed quarterly projections, and signed documents with the same steady hand he'd always had. To anyone watching, he looked unchanged, still the billionaire who bent markets, still the man who moved through rooms like an immovable fact. But inside him, something had shifted so deeply it felt like the axis of his life had cracked. Elena's words echoed in him like a verdict carved into stone. You don't get to want. You get to earn. He doesn't know you. You died 5 years ago. Lucas had built his identity on certainty, his judgment, his instincts, his ability to read reality faster than everyone else. Now that identity was poisoned by one truth. He had been wrong in the only place that truly mattered. He had been wrong about her. And worse, he had been wrong with cruelty. The first thing he did was not dramatic. He didn't fly to Vancouver. He didn't call again. He didn't send gifts to impress. After years of using influence as a weapon, he finally understood that anything loud would be another insult. So Lucas did the one thing his ego had never allowed. He became quiet. He called an emergency meeting with his private wealth office and instructed them to liquidate assets that no longer served a purpose. There were questions, of course. Advisors blinked in confusion. Executives hesitated, calculating the impact. Lucas didn't explain. A villa in the Hamptons sold within days. A penthouse in Manhattan went next. Vacation properties overseas. Gone, one after another, like he was shedding a skin that had become unbearable to wear. He resigned from 2 boards, then 3, then 5. When his attorneys cautioned him about reputation and leverage, he stared at them with such cold emptiness that they fell silent. "What are you doing?" his chief counsel asked carefully. Lucas's eyes stayed fixed on the city outside his office window. "Removing the things I used to hide behind." The counsel didn't understand. Lucas didn't care. He set up a series of anonymous trusts through layers of legal insulation so thick they would take years to trace, even for someone with his resources. He funneled the money into shelters for single mothers, places that offered not just beds, but legal aid, daycare, job training, security. He funded crisis housing, domestic violence support, education programs for women rebuilding their lives with children in their arms. He insisted on one condition: his name could not appear anywhere. No plaques, no press, no charitable galas with cameras. Only impact, only silence. He started visiting some of the facilities under a different identity. Simple clothes, a cap pulled low, no entourage. At first, he told himself he was checking quality control. That was what he always did with investments. But the truth was uglier and more honest. He needed to see what Elena might have faced. He needed to understand what he had forced her into. At one shelter in Brooklyn, he watched a young mother rock a baby while filling out paperwork with hands that shook from exhaustion. The woman's eyes were dull, not from weakness, but from the daily grind of surviving without relief. Lucas found himself staring too long. The mother glanced up, wary. "You lost?" she asked. Lucas swallowed. No. He had never been lost in his life. But he was now. In the parking lot afterward, he sat in his car and gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. For a moment, he saw Elena, pregnant, abandoned, trying to find footing in a world that would have smelled blood on her. And he realized something that made him nauseous. If Elena hadn't been extraordinary, she would have been destroyed. Lucas had not just left her. He had thrown her into a storm and walked away. That truth became his punishment, waking him at night, sitting with him in boardrooms, haunting the quiet between breaths. Sometimes, in the silence of his penthouse, now stripped of luxury because he had sold most of it, Lucas would stand by the window and imagine Noah. 5 years old. Small hands. Curious eyes. His eyes. Lucas would picture a child calling someone else Dad, and feel a pain so sharp it stole his breath. But he didn't reach out again. Elena's boundary was clear. He didn't get access by force, by money, or by guilt. He got it by becoming someone who deserved it. So Lucas kept working, quietly, relentlessly, rebuilding himself the way Elena had rebuilt her life, with discipline. Months passed. Victor Hale, meanwhile, did not disappear quietly. The investigation Lucas set in motion uncovered a trail of fraud and manipulation that ran deep. Victor had been siphoning influence, inserting himself into contracts, planting seeds in rival firms, feeding the press whispers that kept Lucas isolated and dependent. Victor hadn't just framed Elena. He had positioned himself to become the shadow behind Lucas's empire. When Victor finally surfaced, it was through an intermediary, an encrypted message delivered to Lucas's private inbox. "We should talk." Lucas stared at it for a long time before responding with a single word. "No." A week later, another message came, colder. "Some debts are never buried." Lucas didn't flinch. He had lived among predators too long to fear threats. But something about the phrasing unsettled him, like a finger tracing an old wound. He ordered a security overhaul and tightened every system, every personal routine, every travel plan. He began moving like a man anticipating war. Because he was. Victor was not simply angry. Victor was desperate. And desperate men did unpredictable things. In Vancouver, Elena Moore sat in her glass office above the water, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. North Shore Global Industries was thriving. The company she had built, brick by brick, contract by contract, now stood like a fortress around her and Noah. Yet even fortress walls had echoes. She had not expected Lucas to find her. She had expected him to forget her. When he called, and when she saw his face, older, haunted, cracked, she felt something dangerous stir inside her. Not love. Not pity. Memory. The part of her that had once believed in him. She buried it. Noah was everything. Her entire life had condensed into one purpose: protect him. And Lucas Harrington, no matter what he claimed now, was still the man who had abandoned them. Elena's assistant entered quietly. "Ms. Moore, your security team flagged something. An attempted breach in our communications firewall. It was blocked, but it was sophisticated." Elena's posture tightened. Source: unknown. But the signature resembles an internal exploit. The kind used by corporate insiders. Elena's mind jumped immediately to a name she had forced herself not to say. Victor. She dismissed the assistant and sat alone, staring at the dark glass of her office window. The reflection staring back looked strong, composed, unshakable. But she felt the faintest tremor. She did not want Lucas near her life. Yet somehow the past had found its way to her door again. Lucas received news of the attempted breach the same night, through an anonymous warning routed through one of his charity trust networks, the kind of circuit only someone with high-level access could recognize. His blood ran cold. This wasn't about money anymore. Or old grudges. Victor was moving. Lucas paced his apartment in silence, phone in his hand, Elena's contact information open on the screen. He stared at it for a long time. Then he lowered the phone. He wasn't allowed to intrude into Elena's life just because he was afraid. But he also could not ignore a threat that might reach Noah. The pull between those truths tightened like a wire around his ribs. In the end, he didn't call Elena directly. He sent a message through the same secure channel she had used before, a channel she could ignore if she chose. Victor is not finished. If there is any risk near you or Noah, I will do whatever you ask. No demands. No conditions. There was no immediate response. Lucas waited anyway, not expecting forgiveness, not expecting welcome, only hoping she would at least take the warning seriously. Hours later, a single reply arrived. If you want to protect him, prove it with actions. Not words. Lucas read the message twice. 3 times. Then he closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt something that wasn't rage or grief. Purpose. Not the kind tied to power. The kind tied to responsibility. The final scene does not offer peace. It offers tension, sharp, unresolved, alive. Lucas stands alone on a quiet rooftop in New York, the wind cold against his face, city lights stretching beneath him like a sea of glass. His phone buzzes in his hand, an encrypted message, sender unknown. Some debts are never buried. Lucas's jaw tightens. His gaze hardens, not with arrogance, but with readiness. Across the continent, Elena locks her office door, checks the hallway, then kneels beside Noah's bed to brush hair from his forehead. The boy sleeps peacefully, unaware of the shadows moving beyond the walls. Elena watches him for a long moment, her expression equal parts love and vigilance. And somewhere, unseen but closing in, Victor Hale's game continues, twisting the past into a weapon, determined to collect what he believes he is owed. The story ends not with forgiveness, not with reunion, but with a warning. Some storms do not pass. They return. And this time, both Lucas and Elena will have to face them, together or apart, whether they want to or not.